I'm Bob Cawley, and I was at Keewaydin in Temagami, Wigwam in 1939. I think I was on D the first half of the season, and C, which did the Des Moines River trip on the second half. When I first met my wife June in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, when I was at Lehigh, she, looking back on those days, said all you could talk about was Keewaydin. So that's the answer to why I sent my boys there. It's a lot of hard work, some beautiful places, and if you're in the older group where you really work hard, it's a life-turning experience. A boy can become a man. Well, hell, I learned to paddle, and I learned to portage. In those days, at least in the sections I was in, you pretty much stayed either in the bow or in the stern. So I was a bow man. The other thing I learned was I hated the packs, because over the time you were portaging, particularly if you had several portages in one day, the packs would squeeze down and they get lower and lower in your back, and it was really a pain. The Wanigans were wonderful. I loved them. And then we had things called babies. I don't know if they still have those. It'd just be a sack with maybe flour or sugar, something like that. It would just sit in the top of a Wanigan, or maybe even the packs. And they were sort of fun. First of all, in those days, what we slept on, we had a regular waterproof ground sheet, and then we had a Hudson Bay blanket, which was essentially two whole blankets, end to end, and then you had blanket pins that held them together. And as a consequence, you felt everything that was underneath you when you were sleeping. And there were three of us in a tent, and we took turns having the choice. And you'd look around for rocks. The surprising thing, sleeping on just granite ledge was terrific. On the Des Moines River, one of the things that was fun, if we maybe had lunch at the bottom of a rapids.
No, Bob, hold it in your knee.
Then I would get into my suit, if I wasn't already, and I'd climb up and then let the river water take me down over the rocks. And then I'd do that several times. That was fun. We had on the Des Moines River trip, we had an old guide, Jack Green, who had guided my father in 1911. And he was a very routine paddler, pretty powerful, but occasionally I was in the bow and my stern man Bob Lomedy and I felt strong, and we'd crouch on, and then Bob would say to me, "You can't get ahead of the guide." So we learned that lesson. At the end of the Des Moines trip, there's a portage that goes from what is considered the last canoeable section of the river over to the Ottawa. And so when we finished up, all of the section is on the bank of the Ottawa waiting to cross, except the assistant staff man. And we waited and waited and waited, and finally he emerged, paddle in one hand, and a little bit of green canvas and a little bit of wood, all that was left of his canoe. He had decided that he was going to be adventuresome and go down the rest of the river with lots of falls, and that's what happened. What I can say is, since it's only my grandkids who were there multiple years, they're the only ones in the family who went to the bay, they're the only ones who have been on staff. And that whole experience, all those years of camping and being on staff, oh boy, they get mature. I think one of the nicest compliments I've ever heard about Keewaydin comes from campers reporting conversations with Inuits up by the bay who said, "Oh, you guys are canoeing the way our ancestors used to canoe." The main thing is Keewaydin should never, never lose their dedication to hard work.